This question is asking how to tell the difference between stress and excitement, particularly in the car. This person notes that their dog is vocalizing, shaking off, and repositioning themselves a lot. So I think here it can be helpful to start the conversation by differentiating between emotion and arousal. Both are important, but it's helpful to identify, I think, that they are two separate things. So emotions can fuel arousal. And by arousal here, I mean stress hormones, the presence of stress hormones. Stress hormones can be good. They can exist at a good, healthy level. They allow us to do things like stand upright and have conversations with each other, to think. So stress hormones can exist at a good level. We often call that the green zone. In the green zone, we're probably also experiencing positive emotions. And this is an oversimplification, but stay with me here. I like to think of the brain in two, really three when I get really super into it, but two kind of parts. So the thinking brain up here, that prefrontal cortex, and the limbic system, the survival brain, the emotional brain in the midbrain. In the green zone, I want you to imagine, this isn't really how it works before anyone comes for me, but imagine that 100% of the resources are going to the thinking brain in the green zone, and none of them are going to the limbic system. Now associate that thinking brain with the parasympathetic nervous system, with the digestive and immune and reproductive systems, with rest and digest, right? Let's associate the limbic system with the sympathetic nervous system, with the cardiovascular, respiratory, and circulatory systems needing to do more work than normal. So in the green zone, we're totally in that thinking brain, right? And we can think, we can process information. The digestive system is online. We are curious, we're problem solving, we're able to engage in socially appropriate ways. As stress hormones increase, we go into that yellow zone. Now imagine that 80% of our resources are going to that thinking brain, 20% to the limbic system. Here, the thinking brain and the parasympathetic nervous system are still in charge, and the goal of the body is to come back down into green. This is where we see displacement behaviors and other coping skills that may or may not serve the dog, but the goal is to displace that arousal and to bring them back down. We go up into the yellow zone multiple times a day, and as long as we can come back down pretty quickly, and we don't need a ton of support to come back down, and as long as that going into the yellow is often a positive emotion, we're probably okay. In what we're talking about here, remember, we're just talking about arousal levels. So in green, probably positive emotions. Yellow could be just positive emotions. It could be a conflict of emotions, both positive and negative, or it could be negative emotions. So we could be in yellow and be a little unsure, a little uneasy. We could be excited but a bit frustrated. As stress hormones continue to increase, though, imagine now we're in the orange zone and we have, let's say, 80% limbic system now, only 20% thinking brain. The majority of the body's resources have shifted. Now in the orange zone, instead of preparing to come back down, we're preparing for a survival response. At this point, we are no longer feeling purely positive emotions. At this point, even if it started out with positive emotions, we are now in overwhelm. The nervous system is getting overwhelmed and the resources of the body have shifted. It's now harder to process information. The digestive system is going offline. Fine motor skills are going offline. This shift started in yellow, but it's really noticeable here in orange. We are gearing up for red. When we're in orange, we just want to come back down, most typically. There's a lot of nuance here, certainly. Sometimes we come up into orange and it is appropriate, like in play or hunting. But in those scenarios where we have a regulated nervous system, the arousal is appropriate and it's easy for the learner to come back down, and they can largely do it on their own. With my kiddos with dysregulated nervous systems, when they come up into orange, often even if it started with a positive emotion, they're struggling to come back down. They're struggling to self-regulate. And they're likely to keep going up the stress scale. So in those cases, I just want to get my pups out of there. So let's say I have a dog who is in the orange on the car ride. In orange, that section is really marked by physiological signs of stress. So when I'm shaking off because of adrenaline, for example, when I'm fidgeting around because of adrenaline, that's at least an orange zone response. And if I have a kiddo who struggles with resilience, if I have a kiddo who struggles to self-regulate, I might not want them to be there at all. Also, at this point, we are likely overwhelmed. If we're not there because we're exercising, we're playing, we're hunting, that sort of thing. But if we're there from something like a car ride, and it's also going to matter like how often we're going on car rides, what we're doing after the car ride. But for a lot of my client population, if we're getting out of the car in Orange and we struggle to come back down, that's not a good setup for their walk or their training session or their vet visit. We also want to look at how long we're in this state. So if my dog gets like super excited, but they come down quickly along my car ride, it might not be as big of a deal as if my dog can sustain that level of arousal for 30 minutes or several hours. So context can be important, but for my client population, if we're in the Orange in the car, that's something that we need to address, certainly. And I would say for any dog, if they are sustaining that level of arousal in the car or struggling to come back down or struggling to come back down without a ton of support. Oh my gosh. And also, we should talk about body language a bit. So if I have a dog who is panting from an elevated heart rate because they are playing, I'm going to see a soft mouth, soft eyes, and that tongue is going to be really loose, for example. If I have a dog who's panting from an elevated heart rate and they are no longer experiencing positive emotions, they are no longer just excited, I'm going to see a scooped tongue. I'm going to see long lips, wrinkles in the corner of the mouth. So body language can also help us here a bit in terms of emotion.